I moved to the ranch for peace. After 20 years of city chaos, failed board meetings, and condo neighbors who thought privacy was a suggestion, I was done. My slice of land, 50 windswept acres just west of Oak Ridge Valley, was supposed to be my retreat, a place where I could raise cattle, mend fences, and listen to silence that didn't hum with traffic. The ranch bordered Willow Hills, a pristine suburban enclave ruled with an iron fist by the Willow Hills Homeowners Association. You'd think a stretch of barbed wire fence and a property line would be enough to separate our worlds. But not when the woman on the other side believed her clipboard gave her divine authority. Karen Delac, president of the HOA. The name came whispered with fear and resentment even among her own residents. I first met her on a windy March afternoon. Just after I'd finished laying gravel on the driveway, she pulled up in a spotless white SUV, leaned out the window, and eyed my front porch like it offended her soul. "Excuse me," she said, without a greeting. "Are you the new property owner?" I wiped dust off my hands. "I am, and you are." Karen Delacourt, HOA president. "Willow Hills is a very particular community. We strive for harmony. Your equipment is visible from our main walking trail. It's creating visual pollution." I looked past her toward the foothills. The trail she referred to was a thin ribbon of pavement on HOA land, a solid 30 yards past my fence. Beyond that, miles of open country. I smiled. "Well, the fence marks the line. My side stays how I like it." Karen's lips pressed into a pinched smile. "Rules matter, Mr. Coulter," I said, "but this land doesn't fall under your rules." Her eyes narrowed. "Yes, for now, that should have been the end." But Karen Delacourt didn't know how to leave things alone. Over the next few weeks, the little jabs came regularly to the county, anonymous reports to zoning about unauthorized structures, even a drone buzzing over my barn at dawn. Each time I pushed back with facts, permits, and boundaries. But the truth, she wasn't trying to win. She was trying to wear me down. Then came the warnings from locals, quiet chats at the feed store, subtle hints over coffee at the diner. "You're too close to Willow Hills," one rancher muttered. "That HOA don't like seeing anything they didn't build." I heard they once sued a neighbor for planting unapproved trees. Someone else whispered that it was petty, laughably, until it wasn't. I first noticed something off when I saw the new cameras. Small, sleek, and suspiciously angled toward my land, mounted high along Willow Hill's rear privacy wall. They weren't the HOA's usual security fare. They were watching me. Still, I didn't react. I'd dealt with bullies in boardrooms and bureaucrats in city councils. Karen was just another flavor-snooty suburban, and used to getting her way. But what she did next crossed a line I couldn't ignore. One crisp Monday morning, I saddled up and rode the perimeter after a night storm rolled through. Scout, my Shepherd Lab mix, ran ahead, darting through sagebrush and over puddles. The western edge of the fence sloped toward the back of Willow Hills, a quiet stretch, shielded by trees. That's when I saw her. Karen. Halfway up my fence, one foot snagged in the wire, a measuring tape in her hand. Caught like a thief in a suit, I stopped my horse and said the first thing that came to mind. "Didn't take you for the climbing type." She flinched, twisted, and tumbled down the fence line in a shriek of panic and polyester. Scout barked, startled. Karen scrambled to her feet, face flushed, lips already forming words I couldn't believe. "You're harassing me. I'm calling the police." I stared at her, mud-stained, tangled in her own tote bag, standing on my side of the fence. "No," I said, "you're trespassing, and now you're caught." Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone. "I'm the HOA president," she snapped. "I was conducting a property boundary inspection." "You crossed the boundary," I said calmly. "And now you've got a problem." She hit dial. That was the moment I knew this was no longer a petty nuisance. It was a war. And Karen Delacourt had just fired the first real shot. The deputy arrived faster than I expected. Dust plumed behind his cruiser as it rolled down my gravel drive and crunched to a stop just beyond the fence line. Karen stood with arms crossed, lips pursed like she was preparing for court. "Deputy Ross," I greeted, tipping my hat. "Didn't expect to see you so early." He stepped out slowly, already weary. "Got a call about a hostile landowner threatening a civilian." His eyes flicked toward Karen, then back to me with a look that said he wasn't buying it. I gestured toward the fence, caught her scaling it with a tape measure. "She's about 30 feet inside my property." Karen's voice turned shrill. I was performing a boundary verification. HOA business. He startled me as dog barked and I fell. Then he made threats. Ross looked at Scout, now lounging lazily by the saddle, then at me, then at Karen's mud-covered blouse and broken heel. "I see." He pulled out a notepad. "Ma'am, did you receive permission to enter this property?" "I didn't need it," she snapped. "The HOA has standing to verify any structural violations visible from Willow Hills." Ross raised an eyebrow. "This isn't Willow Hills, ma'am. This is ranch land, privately owned and clearly marked." He glanced at the faded but firm "no trespassing" sign hanging beside the gate. I stepped forward and held out my phone. "Got pictures. He's on my land. I'd like this documented." Karen's nostrils flared. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am? Ross sighed. I do, Mrs. Delacourt, and I also know this is the third complaint filed against you for overstepping HOA authority this year. That silenced her for a beat. Her confidence cracked, then hardened into something more dangerous. You're making a mistake siding with him, she warned. This isn't over. Ross looked unimpressed. Ma'am, I suggest you head back to your side of the fence. You're lucky Mr. Coulter's not pressing charges. Oh, but I will be, she hissed. For harassment, intimidation. I'll bring this before the HOA board and county mediation. Just wait. She stormed off, shoes squelching with every step. Scout lifted his head and gave a single, smug bark. Ross chuckled under his breath. She's got more complaints filed than a parking meter in downtown Oak Ridge, he said once she was out of earshot. Still thinks the HOA has federal jurisdiction. I figured as much, I replied. She's already tried zoning complaints, noise violations, even sent a drone over my barn. Keep a paper trail, he advised. If she crosses the line again, we'll have it documented. He tipped his hat and left, leaving the silence behind him thick with tension. But that silence didn't last. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. No passive-aggressive notes on my gate. No anonymous calls from zoning. No HOA newsletters slipped under my door. I knew better than to relax. She was planning something, and sure enough, it came. First was a letter from the county planning department, an anonymous complaint citing a fence line discrepancy requiring a new land survey. Then came a visit from the water board, investigating reports of unauthorized drainage redirection. I handled both. The survey showed my fence was exactly where it should be. The water runoff, natural slope, no violations. Still, the message was clear. Karen had declared war. Then came the morning I found my irrigation valve tampered with. Someone had jammed a screwdriver deep into the main control box, flooding an entire pasture. That was no longer HOA posturing, that was sabotage. I checked the nearest trail cam, the one I'd installed weeks ago when the drone first buzzed over my land. I scrolled through the footage frame by frame, then froze. There she was, Karen, flashlight in hand. Hoodie pulled tight, but that stiff posture that clipped walk-it was unmistakable. She moved like someone who thought the law couldn't touch her. Only this time, she was wrong. This wasn't another skirmish about fence height or barn paint. This was criminal, and I was done playing defense. As I stared at the frozen frame of her caught in the act, a plan began to form. If she wanted to escalate, so would I, but on my terms. No more warnings. It was time Karen Delacourt learned that out here. The fence doesn't just divide land, it separates trespassers from consequences. Karen Delacourt made two critical errors. First, she assumed the HOA's reach extended beyond their gated hedges. Second, she believed I was just another rancher who'd roll over when pushed. She was wrong on both counts. I'd spent most of my life in litigation-heavy real estate development before retiring to the ranch. I knew the system, how to play it, how to prepare, and more importantly, how to outmaneuver someone like her. I didn't retaliate right away. That wasn't my style. Instead, I documented everything. I uploaded the trail cam footage to multiple secure drives, printed stills of Karen on my land with timestamp overlays, and compiled every county visit, every drone complaint, every letter her HOA sent complete with signatures. I even called in a private surveyor to reaffirm the legal boundaries of my property. But I didn't just collect evidence. I studied her. Karen wasn't acting alone. She had enablers people on the HOA board who echoed her delusions of power. One of them, a slick-talking HOA secretary named Brad Milford, had a history of real estate flipping and a bad reputation for hostile property acquisitions. That's when the truth hit me. They wanted my land, not all of it, just a slice. Enough to build their community expansion, a vision buried deep in their HOA master plan filed 5 years ago with the county, a few acres for a new scenic park and wellness retreat. Problem was, that slice belonged to me, and my fence cut through their dream like a buzzsaw through silk. Their plan was simple: harass, complain, sabotage until I either sold or slipped up. Then they'd swarm with legal action. Too bad I was already 10 steps ahead. That same week, I made a quiet visit to the county registrar's office. I purchased a narrow 10-acre strip of land that curved behind Willow Hills, the easement their HOA had used for casual events and nature walks, assuming it was public. Turns out it was private land held in limbo after a bankruptcy filing, and now it was mine. When the deed cleared, I registered it under Coulter Heritage Land Trust, and then I got to work. I called a local event company, livestock handler, a barbecue crew, and a few friends from the Veterans chapter. Within a week, signs went up along the ridgeline bordering Willow Hills: greater than coming soon, Oak Ridge Ranch, Heritage Days, open livestock exhibition, chuck wagon grill, and trail rides. The signs faced into their neighborhood. Karen saw them the next morning. Her SUV skidded to a stop outside my gate. She marched up to the fence, practically foaming. "You're setting up a livestock show behind our homes," she barked. I tipped my hat. As ever, it's open land, zoned for agriculture and educational events, all by the book. "You're doing this to provoke me." "No, ma'am," I said with a smirk. I'm doing it because I can. Her face contorted, searching for a threat that would land. You'll be hearing from our attorneys. I hope so, I said. I've got a folder waiting for them photos, videos, vandalism reports, and that footage of you climbing my fence. She paled, just slightly. You think you've won? She hissed. I looked out at the pasture behind her where volunteers. I had already started setting up a corral. No, Karen. I haven't even started. She spun around and stormed off, her voice cracking into a Bluetooth headset before she even reached the SUV. By the end of the day, HOA board members were sending out emails in full panic mode. Residents were confused. A few were even excited. Some kids had never seen a real cow before. Karen doubled down. She filed a cease and desist. It was laughed out of county court. She tried contacting the zoning commissioner. He sent back my certified approval, stamped and signed her final play, a desperate petition to label my event a nuisance to the HOA's lifestyle brand. That's when the local paper ran the story. Greater than veteran rancher hosts Heritage Festival. HOA president objects to cows near cul-de-sacs. The article went viral. Public opinion turned fast. Comment sections lit up. People mocked Karen's complaints and praised the event. The sheriff himself even posted support on Facebook. By the time the livestock trucks rolled in and the smell of smoked brisket filled the air, Karen was nowhere to be seen. She'd retreated, but I wasn't finished, because the real surprise was still coming. By the time Heritage Days officially opened, the entire town knew what was going down. Lines of trucks rolled into my pasture. Trailers unloaded docile longhorns, rescue ponies, and even a camel from the traveling petting zoo. Vendors lined the fence with hand-painted signs, and the air pulsed with the rhythm of live country blues. The smell of oak-smoked brisket drifted over the hills and landed square in the pristine, cold dissects of Willow Hills. I didn't have to provoke Kieran anymore. The sound of real life was doing that for me. From my barn loft, I watched HOA board members pace behind their garden hedges like caged cats, whispering furiously into phones, waving down county trucks that weren't coming. But I wasn't just playing cowboy. I had one last card to play, and it would end this war for good. Around noon, I walked to the stage in front of the crowd and tapped the mic. Kids held cotton candy. Seniors from town nodded in support. My boots hit the wood with calm confidence. Folks, I said, before we kick off the trail ride, I want to thank you for showing up and helping us make this land more than just pasture. This is about history and land and the people who respect it. A wave of cheers followed, but I wasn't done. I also want to share something the HOA over the hill doesn't want you to know. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a document. In fact, I held up the first. This is the county deed showing the 10 acres behind Willow Hills are now privately owned by the Coulter Heritage Land Trust. Another cheer. I held up the second. This is the cease and desist letter Mrs. Karen Delac filed against me, and this, I tapped a large laminated poster that now displayed on the stage monitor, is the video of her caught trespassing on my land. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some laughter too. And this, I said, with finality, is the civil lawsuit I filed this morning against her and the Willow Hills HOA for trespass, harassment, defamation, and sabotage of agricultural operations. The crowd erupted. Karen didn't show up in person, but I know she heard every word. She'd been quiet for a week, trying to regroup. Probably thought I'd be satisfied once the event was live. But revenge only tastes right when served. Circle. By the next morning, things moved fast. The county had no choice but to investigate my filed complaint. The sheriff's office reviewed the trail cam footage and confirmed criminal trespassing. Karen received a formal summons, and so did her secretary, Brad Milford, who'd authorized internal HOA funds to monitor the ranch's activity, a gross misuse of association money. Meanwhile, HOA members themselves began to revolt. Half the residents hadn't even known Karen was meddling with neighboring land, but now, the truth was public. Newspaper headlines splashed across every local grocery store. Greater than HOA president faces trespassing charges after ranch dispute boils over from clipboards to cattle. The rancher who fenced out the HOA queened. The next board meeting opened to residents by court order. I showed up, not as a petitioner, as a witness. Karen, red-faced and tight-lipped, sat in a corner chair while the new interim president read aloud a motion. Greater than effective immediately. Karen Delacourt is hereby removed from her position as HOA president for misconduct, abuse of power, and violation of neighbor property rights. The room didn't even vote. It erupted in applause. Karen stormed out before the meeting closed. As I stepped outside, Scout trotting by my side, I paused by the old fence where this all began. Quiet now. Not a camera, not a drone, not even a Karen in sight. I gave Scout a scratch behind the ears. "Come on, boy," I said, turning back toward the ranch. "Let's put up a new sign." He followed me to the fence. I drove the stake deep into the dirt, wiped the dust from the placard, and stepped back to admire the words, "Greater than private ranch property. Cross this line, and meet the law." No more games. No more warnings, because peace, like land, only stays Yours if you're willing to fight for it. And as for Karen, last I heard, she'd listed her house for sale. Something about looking for a quieter neighborhood. Good luck with that. Out here, fences don't just keep people out, they remind them where they stand.